I know that in today's world, there's a tendency to go to extremes when evaluating product, but two things can be true at the same time. I think that the Apple Vision Pro is the coolest and, technologically speaking, the most impressive piece of consumer electronics that I've used since starting this channel. And at the same time, it's a product that I want everyone to test out, but most people probably shouldn't buy, and not just because of the price. So how could both of these things be true? Let's talk about it. I want to quickly talk about price because price alone is just part of the picture. People buy or build expensive gaming PCs. Sony couldn't keep the 77-inch 895L in stock, and that's a $5,000 TV. People spend money on audio equipment, on shoes, on clothes. So in general, consumers will spend money on things that they value. And for work, I would spend money on things that directly contribute to increased revenue, something that removes friction from my production process, or something that consistently saves me time. But the Apple Vision Pro is a first-generation product, and there's an inherent risk in being an early adopter. Because not only are you spending a lot of money, and $3,500 is a lot of money, you also can't be sure about exactly what you're getting out of it because it's a new type of product. Now, I had a friend who bought one of the very first high-end Sony flat-screen plasma TVs. I think it was 42 inches. It was probably still like 3, 4, or 5 inches thick, and it cost $8,000. And I remember that we would always go to his house to watch games or movies because the image quality was so much better than what everyone else had. Now, at that time, while most people couldn't afford it, at least those who could knew exactly what they were getting. And this is different from if Apple didn't make a smartphone and then they made their first phone this year, because at least we would have other relatively similar smartphones to compare the iPhone with. The Apple Vision Pro created a whole new category. I don't think that we could do a fair versus video with any other AR or VR headset on the market where it would be comparing apples to apples. You know what I mean. I want to start by quickly talking about the product itself. I'll put together a more detailed review, but after using it for 8 to 10 hours a day for 3 days, I have some thoughts. So first of all, the second you see it in real life or handle it, it's hard not to be impressed by the design and the build quality. I mean, it's a beautiful product. Clearly, Apple wanted to go with a look that's different from other VR and AR headsets, and clearly they accomplished it with the headset itself and the strap. Now, quick note, Apple doesn't want the Apple Vision Pro to be referred to as a VR or AR headset. They want it to be called a spatial computer. That's probably in an effort to further separate it into its own category. At the same time, our only reference point right now is to AR and VR headsets, so it's hard to have a discussion without using those terms. I want to start out by talking about my very first experience because I chose to go through the demo at the store rather than just picking up my Vision Pro and heading home. But first, let me tell you that honestly, I was not expecting to be overly impressed. Now, don't get me wrong, I assumed that it would be better than any other headset that I've used. Like, otherwise you couldn't charge 5 to 10 times the price. But again, I had no context for exactly how it could be better and how it could be that much better. And that's where I failed, so I'll come back to that. When you first put the Vision Pro on, you wait a little while and then the Apple logo comes up and then you see it writing hello like it does with a lot of other Apple products, but this time it's writing it in the air. And that's all it took to already show me that my scale for evaluation was way off. For example, if my scale was like 1 to 10, then I think this other product is a 7. Well, I think this is like a 92. So image quality is extraordinary. I mean, it's pixel sharp. The UI is so crisp and everything you interact with literally looks like it's there. And unfortunately, all the screen recordings that you'll see still only capture a very small fraction of the experience. You begin by registering your hands, and then you look at 6 different dots with 3 different lighting conditions. And I'm literally going through the entire setup process with like a permanent smile on my face, which brings me to how you actually interact with the device, and this is absolutely wild. Now, obviously there is no controller, so everything is based on eye tracking. And I remember watching the Apple event and thinking, well, how's that gonna work? And also, like, how good could the eye tracking actually be? I don't wanna be missing buttons because the Vision Pro isn't super accurate. Well, it's astonishingly accurate. Again, it's very, very difficult to convey this in a video, but the moment you experience it, you know. Now, do I still mess up? Sure, on very rare occasions, but that's because I'm not looking exactly at the item that I wanna interact with. And this is different from how we typically interact with our other devices, because if you want to tap on something on the iPad and you can see it from your peripheral vision, you can still reach over and tap it. You don't need to actually look at it. With the Vision Pro, you have to actually look directly at the item. Now, the cool thing is that essentially any item that you can interact with immediately responds to you looking at it. And that makes Vision OS dynamic and interactive in a super unique way. It's almost like hovering over an item with your mouse would ever so slightly bring each element to life, but not in a way that's distracting or over the top. It's almost like Vision OS feels alive. Now to another very serious concern that I had about the Vision Pro, and it has to do with motion sickness. So I get motion sickness very easily. For example, if I'm not the driver in a car, there's no chance that I'm using my phone in the car. I can't play or even be in the room when someone's playing a lot of first and third person shooters on a big TV. And other AR and VR headsets very quickly fatigue my eyes or, again, make me sick and make me have to take them off. Essentially, if you want to test whether your product creates motion sickness in users, I'm your guy. Well, I guess that's only true if you really want the answer. If you want the answer to be no, then maybe I'm not probably the right guy. But in any case, with the Vision Pro, the apps, the other UI elements are so static and so fixed in space that even though I expected it to be better than others, I still underestimated it. I used it for 8 to 10 hours a day, and for the most part, it was a super positive experience. Like, you can put an app somewhere, walk around, come back, and it's still in the exact same spot. So I don't know what kind of wizardry Apple used there, but it was worth it. Now, if you jump around and move your head back and forth super fast, then again, things do get jittery, so don't do that. But I can tell you that I've worn it around the house and outside without getting sick. Now, going back to how you interact with the Vision Pro, it was super hard for me to visualize, like no pun intended, but how tapping in the air was going to work. But it's extremely accurate. You don't need to have your hands up in the air, which is your natural tendency, and it would get super tiring if you did have to do that. Now, the funny thing is that sometimes I tap with my middle finger and thumb instead of my index finger and thumb, and then it doesn't work, which goes to show you how accurate the detection is. You can look at a certain UI element and then tap to capture an app and move it around. You can look at the bottom right and then tap the icon to stretch the app, and you can use two hands to zoom in and out when looking at something like a photo. It's really super intuitive, and it doesn't take more than a few minutes to start flying around Vision OS. Also, the way that the Vision Pro works with the Apple ecosystem is fantastic. You get iMessage notifications when you're watching a movie. You can just open a floating window and reply while your movie is playing in the background. You can record video or do screen recording and then airdrop them to your iPhone. Everything is super tightly integrated and has been seamless so far. Now, battery life has been somewhere between 2 to 4 hours, and like with any other mobile device, I'm sure that has to do with what I'm actually asking the Vision Pro to do. The battery comes with a charging cable, which is directly attached to the battery itself. I assume that's because they don't want it to come loose. And then the cable connects to the Vision Pro and locks in very securely with a twist and then a satisfying click. So this is an area where there had to be some give and take. So first of all, I wish that I could just plug this cable into any of the power banks that I own, because for this size battery and for this weight, I could get a much higher capacity power bank. I don't know the logistics behind why right now it's not an option, but it's not an option. What you have to do instead is take a power bank, run a USB-C to USB-C cable into this battery, and then plug this battery into the Vision Pro. It's not the most elegant solution, it's heavier, and it requires another cable, but it's what we have right now. And then of course, if you're stationary, you can use a power adapter and then essentially indefinitely power the Vision Pro. Now, hopefully some third-party batteries appear on the market soon, but I don't know if that's something that Apple will allow, and I'll try to get an answer for my next video. Now, because this is not my detailed review, I'm not gonna go and do a deep dive into a lot of apps, but I wanted to go ahead and tell you what's been the most fun, what's been the most useful, a few shortcomings to consider, and then what's the most exciting thing. So starting with fun, it's clearly multimedia and immersion. I watched Avengers Endgame in 3D on a giant screen while hanging out with Mac on a couch. Being able to watch movies on a large, high-quality display anywhere is a game changer, and that's true for both 2 and 3D movies. The immersive content is truly unbelievable. Like, nothing I can show you in a video could even come close to the actual experience. Now, there's one episode of Adventure which is immersive content, and this woman named Faith Dickey, I think, who is a highliner, walked across a highline like 3,000 feet up above the ground, and I was so nervous the whole time. Like, I'm literally sitting there going, please let her make it to the end, which I don't want to ruin for you, but if you know, you know. In any case, you feel like you're right there with her. Like, the visuals are spectacular, and so is the audio. Now, I have to admit that I wasn't expecting audio to be fantastic. I have a ton of headphones, I have all the AirPods, including the AirPods Max, and the Vision Pro doesn't go in your ear or cover your ears. Again, it's hard to show in video, but the spatial audio on the Vision Pro is so good, and it helps truly immerse you into the content that you're watching, and it massively contributes to the feeling of actually being there. Now, the most useful feature so far has been the ability to mirror my MacBook display and then work on a giant screen. I can just bring up Premiere Pro and then have a super long timeline, and all it takes to get this going is literally tapping one button, and I'm good to go. You are limited to a single display, although you can make it as big as you want, but coming from my main workstation, that was one area where I hope Apple can make improvements in the future and allow for multiple displays. It was great though to be able to use the keyboard and trackpad on my MacBook, which are some of my favorites, and at the same time, I could still have as many Vision Pro apps as I wanted around me, which is extremely helpful when I'm doing research. Again, this is something I'll cover in my detailed video. Now, I want to make sure that I still mention a few things that I think you should consider before jumping in. First of all, it's a first-gen device, so it's not perfect. There are going to be glitches here and there, although I haven't experienced any of them yet, but like with any other new device, it's, I guess, expected. Right now, there are not a ton of apps, especially ones designed specifically for the Vision Pro. There's no YouTube, there's no Netflix, there's no Instagram, no Twitter. Obviously, you can open those in a browser, but that would be like me telling you to take your iPad and then use all those services through Safari. And speaking of that, you can also use some iPhone and iPad apps, which increases the number of available apps. But again, it's not every app. So those apps that I mentioned were not available are also not available for the Vision Pro in the iPad or iPhone version. But now I want to get to the most exciting thing. Like, I think that the Vision Pro took such a quantum leap in technology with this combination of hardware and software that it actually opened the door to things that most people just didn't think were possible. And without this type of platform to develop for, we wouldn't be able to continue and push the envelope at this pace. And that, I think, is the true genius of the Apple Vision Pro. And while I'm supremely impressed by what Apple was able to do here technologically, I'm even more excited about what's to come. So do I think people who have already allocated $4,000 for fun should buy the Vision Pro? I think that